friends, if there is one thing a superhero story shows us, it's that there is always a battle between good and evil. And in the end, the good guys win. Sure, some of the stories are more complicated, but they all come down to this. Good and evil are real, and good wins. My name is Peter, and this is part 3 of the marvelous story of the Bible, Endgame. So far in the story, we've seen that, like superheroes, every human has an origin story. Each of us has a unique individual story, but we're all shaped by the story of the first humans in the opening pages of the Bible. That story explains why every person has the potential to do incredible good, reflecting God's love in the world. But it also explains why every one of us has a tendency to turn away from God and do wrong. Each one of us is a mix of both good and bad. But in the middle of the story, there's a hero, Jesus. He's the fullness of God in human form. He's an unexpected hero who gives himself away, living a life of service, dying not to destroy bad people, but to destroy the power of evil itself. His victory is complete when he rises from the dead, showing that evil and death do not win in the end. But here's the problem. When we look around, it doesn't look like the battle is over. We still see war, depression, greed, hate, racism, hopelessness, anxiety, gun violence, cancer. You can name a billion things, the list goes on. You see it, you feel it every single day. The world is still broken, even though Jesus has already brought healing. So what's going on? A helpful phrase for this tension is already, but not yet. Through Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, heaven and earth begin to overlap in a permanent way. God's presence is already at work in us and in the world. But heaven and earth aren't fully joined together yet. God promises that one day they will be, and all things will be made new, better, even than the original creation. That's a big promise. And honestly, it can be hard to believe. Here's an example. In the movie Avengers Infinity War, Doctor Strange, quirky guy, cool story, he has the ability to look into the future. He checks all the possible outcomes of the battle against Mr. Snap, Thanos, the ultimate bad guy. And Doctor Strange sees 14,605 futures. And when asked how many of those end with the good guys winning, he responds with, if you know it, do it with me, 1. Sometimes trusting God feels like believing in an impossible 14 million to 1 odds. Sometimes even worse. Trusting Jesus, believing in God, being a Christian can feel really, really hard sometimes. But the difference is this. The Bible tells us how the story ends. We know the end game. No matter what happens between now and then, God wins. Heaven and earth will be fully reunited and overlapped again. That's where all of this is going. So the question is, how does knowing the end game change how we live in the tension in the middle of the battle today? The battle is still raging in our hearts, in our relationships, and in the world. This is our own infinity war. But just like Jesus didn't come to fight bad people, but to defeat the bad itself, we aren't called to fight people. We're called to resist and fight against the power of sin and evil in the world. That's why Paul, one of the authors of the Bible who wrote this to the Ephesians, some Jesus people in the city of Ephesus, Paul writes, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, the powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." He is saying that we aren't fighting a battle against any bad people, but against the bad that exists in the world. Jesus teaches repeatedly to love our enemies and to love our neighbor, not to fight them. And the battle Jesus fought was against sin, the disease within us that causes us to do bad. And if we want to follow Jesus, then our struggle is also against the power of sin in our lives. So how do we fight? What weapon do we bring? Maybe do we bring a lightsaber, right? And here's the dark saber from Star Wars. Wait, actually, that's the wrong franchise. So maybe not this. As followers of an unexpected hero, actually, we need an unexpected weapon. Paul gives the answer in another letter that he wrote. And now, these three remain: trust, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Trust, hope, and love. These don't really sound like weapons at all, but in God's story, they're the strongest weapons of all. Love is our calling to reflect God's love to others. Even the messiest, most difficult people are still made in God's image, and we can show them His love. When it comes to trust, when we fail, and we will, our trust rests in Jesus, the unexpected hero who heals our broken hearts. And hope. When the world is still broken, we hold on to hope. Hope in the endgame, God's promise that heaven and earth will one day be one. That hope fuels us to keep going even when the odds seem impossible. So here's my hope for you, that you'd step into this story. At the end of the day, the marvelous story of the Bible is an invitation, asking you to join the most epic team ever assembled. A team that follows our hero Jesus in his battle between good and bad that has been raging ever since humans first existed. You're invited to join the story and be a part of spreading goodness and bringing justice and reflecting God's love to everyone you meet. God wants to give you all the power you need to join his story and live like Jesus. You're invited to reflect the unexpected hero and together with all of the other followers of Jesus to be a fantastic team armed with a story of trust, hope, and love that is the strangest and the strongest weapon of all, to join the struggle for love and beauty in a broken world. The question is, are you in?